Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another Snapshots and Stories. I'm your host, Paul Owen. On today's episode, we're going to talk about, AI. I'll put it out that way, but a certain portion of AI or a certain derivative of AI or a form of it, I guess. And that is ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is something we've been using for a little while in a group that I'm involved with, a photography group that I'm involved with. And what we use it for is not to fix our pictures or make fake backgrounds or anything like that. It's designed to, how we use it rather, is so that we can take a photo, submit it to ChatGPT, and then ask questions based on what we want to know about the photograph. So if we want an evaluation on the photo, if we want some help or improvement suggestions from the photo, it's kind of become like a best friend or a good friend, but with all kinds of photography knowledge that you can go to, so that when you're done a photograph, you can say, okay, I think it looks really good to me, but you always need a fresh set of eyes, or maybe somebody else to have a look at it, because what you see as a photographer, and after editing a photo for quite a long time rather, if it took a while to edit, what you see is probably quite different than what the audience sees, or what everybody else's interpretation of what you have is. So my point behind this video today is to see, by what ChatGPT has suggested, if we make the adjustments that they had suggested based on our questions, would the picture actually improve? So it's a really interesting thing to an exercise rather to do, because you just don't know, really how your audience perceives what you have done, because of your limited vision of what your picture should be. B, perhaps your limited, how could I say this, editing techniques, because you may think that you've edited something just right, but with some thoughts or changes or suggestions, it's like, oh, I never would have thought to do that, or I didn't know I could do that, that kind of thing. So by going through this exercise, there's a number of different things that we as photographers and editors either miss, or maybe just didn't think about putting in there at all. So that's what this exercise is going to be about today. So this is going to be an exercise in using ChatGPT suggestions on a photograph and seeing, okay, is this valid? Or did I ask the wrong questions and maybe it's not valid at all when I'm done with the results? So anyway, so I'm going to go through the exercise, and just like I would if I downloaded or if I put my suggestions in and then I got the feedback back, and see what we can come up with. So let's just do that. So I'm going to share a photo with you. Okay, so basically here's a photo of a cellist, and this was a photograph that I did over at Kate's place. Kate's my photographer friend, used to be the co-host on the show here, and we talked about doing a collaborative kind of a photograph. And I thought, okay, well, I went over and I visited with Kate, and we talked about a number of things. And I started walking around her house with her, and I saw this absolutely amazing, beautiful blue wall. It just reminded me of being in another country. Really, it's just so cool, because her house is built somewhere in the late 1800s. So there's a lot of really cool character things about that place. The one thing that I really fell in love with was, if you look at this photograph, is the blue wall that's behind Chelsea. And I just said, wow, I got to shoot something in here. This wall is just so amazing. And then immediately I thought, it's got to be a musician of a sort. And so we got chatting away, and then she says, well, I happen to know a cellist. And I said, you do? Yes. And so anyway, so Kate got a hold of Chelsea, which is the cellist you see here. And we set up this photo shoot, and it turned out to be one of the funnest, most interesting shoots I've been on. We had an absolute ball. So here's the photograph. So as you can see, it's a cellist sitting in a room, and this is actually lit with one large softbox. I think it's a 3x5, and it of course is to the to the right of the photo of the cellist here. And then we used a reflector to actually reflect in a little bit more light on this side. And basically this is what we ended up with a photograph. So I thought the photograph looked pretty good. So I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to put this in, you know, in with my photos, my portfolio, is there any suggestions that, you know, or anything I could do to change this photo? So I put it into ChatGPT. So I put it in and I basically asked ChatGPT, I said, is there any way that we could improve upon what you see right here now of this cellist? And so this is what ChatGPT came back with. So I'm going to read it to you. Now, I don't know if I can move this box. No, I can't. So my head will be turned sideways. So sorry about that. So it says, lovely portrait already. There's a lot working in its favor. Here's how it could be improved, framed as refinements rather than fixes. So they're saying some tweaks and not a lot of fixes on this one. Okay, well, that's fair. So what's working well? So they're saying what's working well in this one. It's moody. It's mood and intimacy. So this is the category this is. So mood and intimacy is the category it gives me. It says the downward gaze and closed posture create a calm, introspective feel that suits the cellist perfectly. Okay, that's wonderful. That's nice. Let's see what other. Now it talks about color harmony. The warm reds and the dress and the cello contrast beautifully with the cool blue background, very painterly. Okay, so there's a couple of nice bits of positive feedback that you get from ChatGPT. Directional light. Now it says the soft light sculpting her face and the cello adds depth and texture without feeling harsh. Okay, I like that because that's kind of what the intent was. And then the connection to the instrument. The pose clearly communicates musicianship and focus, not just somebody holding a cello. Now, when we pick the cellist or even come up with the idea of the musician, it had to be somebody who was a true player of the instrument. And that was the whole point, because we didn't want to have somebody just holding something, because you can tell right away if somebody's not a player of an instrument, they're just a model holding something. They never hold it right. So anyway, kudos to Chelsea for being the fine musician that she is. So that's kind of where it stopped on telling me the positives about the image. Now it's going to say ways to improve it further. So it talks about background separation. So it says the background texture is nice, but it's close in tone to the hair and the upper cello. A slightly darker vignette or subtle background blur would help the subject pop more. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, as we go through these suggestions, I'm actually going to apply them to the image. So let's go ahead and a darker vignette and a subtle background blur. So I'm going to take and throw this right over to Camera Raw. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add just a slightly darker vignette. So I'm going to put a little bit stronger vignette on this. Okay, and that's doing that. Now it's also suggesting that I take that background and blur it out a bit. So let's go ahead. We'll go to our mask. And then we'll go to background. And it selected pretty much everything except for Chelsea and the cello. So let's go ahead and blur that background a bit. Now how I'm going to do that, I'm just going to take the texture down. So if I go ahead and grab that slider texture and I'll back it off a bit, and now we're getting a softer background. I'll increase that so you can actually see what I've done. So there's the background before I applied the texture reduction, and there's what it is for real. You can see that probably a lot more. Let's see if I can find a crack in the wall. I think there's one up there. There it is. So you can see that application happening. You see that crack that's up here in this area? So when I actually soften that up, it'll soften that crack too. And there we go. Okay, so I've done that. So no, those are the first two suggestions that it said. Okay, so let's move on. So it says now, hand and bow placement. The bow hand is expressive, but it sits near the edge of the frame, which it does. So as you can see here, I'm pretty close to the edge of the frame on that. So I'm going to say, okay, well, fair enough. Let's go ahead and adjust that. I don't think I can adjust it here. I have to put it back into Photoshop. Let me just hit okay. And let's go ahead and give her a little more space. So if I was going to space her out more, I can just simply go to crop, and I'm going to actually give her a little bit more room. And I'm just going to use the generative expand. I'm just going to generate that. And that'll just take a second. And it's going to fill in that part of her hand, or where the hand is rather. And let's give her a little more space behind the hand. And there we go. Perfect. So now that we've got that, I'm just going to hit Control Alt Shift and E, create a copy. Now I'm going to send that back over to Camera Raw and continue editing. All right, so now I've got a little more space behind her hand, so it's less cramped. Now, it says the highlight control on the cello. So it says the cello's body is gorgeous, but the brightest highlights draw the eye away from the face. Okay, so slightly reducing the highlights or adding a gentle dodge to the face would rebalance the visual attention. Okay, so let's do a little bit of both. So I'm going to go ahead, whoops, and I'm going to select my mask again. This time I'm just going to select objects, and I'm just going to select half of the cello because I just want to take the highlights down there. Let's see, there we go. And all I'm going to do now is just simply take the highlights themselves and drop them down a little bit on the cello. Perfect. Now it looks a little bit more natural in terms of its brightness on that part. Let me just see if I can need a little contrast on it. A little less, a little more. There we go. So it still looks like it's at the window, but it's not near as bright as it was. Okay, so let's say we've done that. Now let's do the other suggestion as well. Let's go to her face, and let's just bring up, so we'll go to our mask again, select people. And once we've got the person, we can do all kinds of different things with masks. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I love Adobe Camera Raw because of all of this automation. So let's do facial skin. So we just simply click on facial skin, and we're going to create, and I'm just going to bring it up just ever so slight, just to give a little more brightness to foot right there. And that's all I'm doing. Focus on her face. Beautiful. Okay. So that's what we've done. So we've got that part of it done. Now, it also suggests crop refinement. So now it's suggesting a bit of a crop. The crop is strong, but trimming a touch from the bottom of the floor area could tighten the composition and keep the focus higher. Okay, well, fair enough. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and let's go back over to Photoshop just for a second. And let's go ahead and do a crop on this. So let me just get that out of the way. And let's go to crop. And I'm just going to take this up just below the knee, but still on the shin, so that it still looks like she has a leg. But I'm getting rid of a lot of that floor detail that we don't need. And that should bring us up toward her. So let's go ahead and crop that. Okay, perfect. So now we didn't cut off at the knee, we never do, and it still looks like her full leg, but because we don't have the floor boards to look at, it's really focusing us much higher on the image. I agree, nice. Okay, so let's go back to Camera Raw and see what else it suggests that we do with this image. Okay, so alternatively, now it gives me some other suggestions in terms of the crop. If I had shot this in a much wider way. Alternatively, going wider to include more of the chair could feel more intentional. Okay, so now the face light is going to talk about. So a subtle fill or reflector on the shadow side of the face could reveal just a bit more expression without losing the moody feel. Now, let's go ahead and try that. Now, as I told you earlier on when we shot this, we did use a reflector, but maybe we didn't have enough light on that side of her face. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose the subject this time. So I'm going to use my mask, and I'm going to choose subject. And it's going to choose Chelsea and her cello. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to intersect the mask with a linear gradient. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to affect the background, and I don't want to affect anything but the area I want to play with. So by using this linear gradient, I can just affect the side of her face and even her arm and hand because I think that's a little bit dark to begin with. So I'm going to mask that, and there's already a gradient in it. So let's go ahead and just slightly increase the shadows. Bring the shadows up just a little bit. There we go. So you can see that I'm bringing that up just a bit, and it's giving reveals her arm and hand a little bit more, as well as the side of her face right here. So just keep, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see. So if I take that back to 0, so it's just giving us a little bit more spread there. And if I even wanted to add just a touch more exposure, just a touch. There we go. Perfect. All right. So I'm done with that adjustment. That looks fantastic. So far so good. I think we're doing well here. Okay, so those were the adjustments that it had suggested so far that we make. So after it gives you those suggestions, then what it does, it gives you an overall assessment. So it says overall, this is already a professionally expressive portrait. The improvements are about polish guiding the viewer's eye more deliberately and refining balance, not really correcting flaws. If you want, you can tell me. Now it's asking for more information. This is really good because it's almost like you're having a conversation with a friend. You talked a little bit about something, but let's delve a little deeper. This is really interesting. So it says, if you want, tell me, is this for a portfolio, a concert promotion, or is it an editorial? And it also wants to know, in addition to that, was it shot in a studio or in natural light? So I responded, and my response was, it says those details would change how far I would push the refinements. So I said this was shot in a house using a large softbox. This would also be for portfolio use. Okay, so then ChatGBT responds. It says, that makes this even more impressive. Shooting this in a house with a single large softbox and getting this level of control is already portfolio worthy. Given that it's for a portfolio, here's how I would refine it specifically with that goal in mind. Now, keep in mind, ChatGPT is a very nice person. So you get some compliments on it. It kind of makes you feel nice about your work. But but they don't say things that aren't true, which is really nice. Okay. So let's move on. So let's see what it suggests. It's saying now for portfolio level refinements and keeping the same setup, the light placement, tiny shift could pay off big. Okay, so let's see what it says. So it says move the softbox slightly higher and 10 to 15 degrees more toward the face. Okay, and what this would do would be add a touch more catch light to the eyes, and even with the eyes down as they are, and also it would lift the cheekbone right here and separate it from the jaw. There's a cheekbone, and creates jaw separation, and reduce how dominant the cello highlights really feel. Okay, so I can see that, and we kind of did that. But I didn't change the light or move the light because I can't, because the shoot is over. But they're suggesting if you were in the middle of this, or if you're going to shoot it again, you might want to consider where you might want to place that light, which makes perfect sense to me. Now, you're very close already. This is a micro adjustment. So it is kind of close. Okay. So the face versus cello hierarchy. For portfolio work, the viewer should go face, hands, and instrument. And right now it's more cello and face, not so much the hand. But we talked a little bit earlier about how we did change the light brightness on the hand, and I could bring it up more, but I don't think I'm going to at this point, because I brought it up to a point where the balance is okay. Well, you know what? What the heck? We're here. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go to our create mask. We're going to go back to select people. And this time we're going to go ahead and go to body skin. And we're going to create. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to intersect this mask with, again, yet another linear gradient. So let's just go ahead and just work on that part. And let's just go ahead and expose that just a little bit more. There we go. Not too much, because we want to have the gradient look natural at the same time, the way that the light's falling. I think that looks good. Okay. All right. So now we brought her hand to life a little bit more. So that's good. All right. Now it also says in the cello to burn the highlights. Well, we've already done that. We've taken care of the highlights. This is a refinement that it's telling me if I had not made any of the adjustments that it had suggested in the first place. And the reason to keep the cello highlights down is this keeps the cello rich, but stops it from stealing the spotlight. And that's a good point, because whatever's the brightest thing on the image, that's always where our eye goes to, whether it's a portrait, whether it's a landscape, any kind of photography, whatever that bright spot is, that's always where we look first. So this is actually excellent information in terms of photography. Now let's talk about the background. So it says background polish. Since it's a home environment and a very gentle vignette, especially top, left, and right. So we've already done that, because again, we've done that on the suggestion from the first time. Slight desaturation background, say 5 to 10%. Okay, well, let's do that, because I agree with that. So let's take that blue background. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select with our mask, we're going to select the background. And we're going to go and we're going to desaturate that. Now, most of the background is blue, so I'm not going to be too concerned about and worrying about anything else that's in the background. So let's go ahead and desatch that background slightly. There we go. Perfect. Not too much, but slightly. All right, so we've done that. And we've already done the blur, so that's good. Slightly desaturate, which we did. Okay. Now, the optional... a tiny texture softening so it feels intentional, not wall. So so the tiny texture softening, which I've already done because I've already blurred the background, so I don't have to do that. Because what the whole point behind that, what this does is it elevates it nice from the room and it turns it into more of a studio gray backdrop. So which is exactly what we did. Now, if I had shot this with even a more shallow depth of field, I could have blurred the background more, but I was so focused and fixated on that wall that I wanted it to be part of the image. But in the grand scale of things, it's really more environmental, supporting the cellist, and that's one of the big things I missed on this photo. So for a portfolio, confidence matters. 2 strong options: tighter vertical crop, which we could have trimmed down more floor space, which we did. Slightly wider crop, which we gave her, so we allowed more of the breathing room for the hand. And what to avoid: to the current, almost but not quite floor visibility. And it said decide and commit. So it talked a little bit about reducing the floor, which we've done anyway. So these things that it's talking about are things that it suggested in the first, but talking about doing them as refinements. Now, there is one thing it does do that I agree with, and it said the red dress works beautifully, but for portfolio polish, they're suggesting that we reduce the saturation slightly in the red portion of the dress. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go back to our trusty our mask. Let's select people once more, and this time we can select clothes, which will select her dress. It might select a couple of some more things, but it's so dark I'm not worried about affecting those. So let's create, and we're going to desatch that red dress just a little bit. There we go. So it's just subtle, but it's just enough. Okay, and it's asking us to do one more thing. It's suggesting that we warm the skin slightly compared to the cello so they don't compete with each other. Okay, well, I can understand that. So let's do that. Beauty again of this masking system in Adobe Camera Raw is we can select people one more time. This time we're going to select the body skin, create, and it's asking me to warm it up. So I'm going to go down to my temperature selector and I'm going to slightly warm it. It's going to give me just a push of yellow. So to counter that with my hue, I'm just going to add a little bit more red. but I don't want her too saturated. So I'm just going to decrease the saturation ever so slight. And that skin looks absolutely natural. And, but yet we have made the adjustment away from the tone of the cello. Okay, so we've done that. So this, I think, let me just look and see if there's anything else that is suggested. So now it says for a portfolio image, and it starts to give me all the check marks of what this image does have. So it's emotionally strong, technically it's controlled, musically authentic, and it just needs hierarchy and polish for reinvention. And honestly, this already says serious musician, serious artist, with a few light and post tweaks. It is exhibitable. So if you want, and then now it's suggesting that it can do even more, but I don't think we need to get into any more than that. So let's go ahead and now let's do a reveal of what it was like before, where we started and where we finished. All right, so there's the finished job of the image, and here is where it started. So let's go ahead and put them side by each. So we'll go arrange vertical up, and I'm just going to make this one here fit the screen, and this one as well fit the screen, and there we are. So when you look at these two images, there are a lot of adjustments that went on. So like it had suggested, we cut the floor out. We took the highlights of the cello down. We extended back where her hand was so that we gave her more room to actually move the bow. We took away the distraction of the floorboards, which focused us more up to her face. We changed the tone of her skin to not compete with that of the cello. We took the blue background and did a number of things. First, we vignetted a little heavier. We took the blue saturation and desaturated it to a certain degree. And we also softened the background by using a texture reduction, which gave it more of a softer, either a defocused look or, as it stated, more of a background backdrop kind of a look. Excuse me. What else did we do with that? Yes, we desaturated the dress from that. It's kind of a bright red there now that I look at it, versus a much more subtle, more natural kind of a red that's in there as well. So in my estimation, this did an absolutely fantastic job, ChatGPT did rather, of suggesting what we could do to improve our photos. And anyway, that's really what this exercise was all about. If I use ChatGPT as a suggestion and I ask the right questions, what I'm doing with this photo, it will give me some suggestions, but it will ask me even more questions so that we can get even more pointed on this image and really take a look at it and to get the results that we had desired when we basically shot the photo in the first place. So based on this exercise, I'm extremely impressed with what ChatGPT had suggested, and by using just using Adobe Camera Raw, making some slight adjustments to this. I couldn't shoot it again, but I could make those adjustments. And I think between the original image and the way that it turned out, the subtle changes, because it said too that this wasn't about major adjustments, this was about refinements, and that's what we did. I just want to show you one more time on the photo, the two images, and you can see the refinements. I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit here, just a little tighter, not much, and the same on both images in at about 25%, 43, 29. Close enough. So, so the adjustments are subtle, but they're softer. So it really softened the image. It really focused the image more towards Chelsea's face, and again, by increasing the skin on her arm and hand, it sort of took her hand, her bow hand, out of the shadows. So fantastic work by them on this. So I'm very, very pleased with how that turned out. So having said all of that, this has been a great exercise, and I recommend anybody out there who is a photographer and they don't have somebody to have some feedback on their photos, and you want some photo feedback, go to ChatGBT. It's an excellent source, as we have just saw with this illustration. So thank you so much for watching. If you like the channel, make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell, and do all those things that you would do so that you can get more of this content, because I really, truly love bringing it to you. And I'm really looking forward to our next episode. So we'll see you next time on Snapshots and Stories. So long for now.